Isn't geographical representation, that is representing your own districts, being weakened by the way we finance our campaigns? I remember running for Congress a few years back when most of my opponents' money came from out of state. Do you think that's healthy for our system? Why or why not?
I believe that is not healthy for our system. Right now, the average amount of money you spend on a House representative election is $1.5 million. And for a Senate, it's $6 million. That's a gross amount of money that's being spent on these elections when the party lines are drawn in such a way that it does benefit those representatives anyway. Well, the founders wanted this, well, in the single-member district, the people are the ones that are supposed to choose who the representatives are, and the representatives are supposed to go directly to the people, and the money that's coming from outside breaks that kind of separation, that check that we want to see with our representatives serving their own constituencies.
Yes, we see that with these campaign funds coming from out of the districts, we see that these special interest and different organizations that do not have a representative from the constituency have significant influence over the outcome of the elections.
Right, for example, the McCain-Feingold Act that tried to limit these, outside corporations from funding political campaigns, that was recently, product with the Citizens United case that just came up that said that corporations now can fund these, now can fund these political campaigns. That, I think that increases political partisanship because that just makes, the incumbent, it just makes it that much harder for outside interests to, small minority interests to play a role and get represented in Congress. Go ahead.
Well, isn't a solution to that problem and problems that you've raised about majority-minority districts and other issues, gerrymandering, to eliminate the single-member district altogether and go to an at-large system, perhaps with a proportional representation? Wouldn't that be a better way to avoid all these problems and going to court and everything else?
Well, we see that if we eliminated the single-member districts, the regional differences between each part of each state, of each district, would be lost. We see that someone in a district in Alaska and someone in a district in our state, Alabama, have very differing views on what they need their representative to do. So we see that, and also in our own state, we see that if a representative from the lower part of the state near Mobile differs greatly from District 7, which is one of the majority-minority districts which we talk about, they have very differing views on what a representative needs, what they need in a representative for Congress.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the VRA, I would suppose that the Voting Rights Act and the amended Section 2 of the VRA that's caused these majority-minority districts, I think that's hurting us more than, and that's a bigger problem. Because the fact is that when the lines are drawn where only minorities get the majority vote, all the surrounding districts around them are bleached. And that there isn't any kind of opposition for the districts surrounding that district. And
I agree with both Alex and Brett that I think that because our nation is so large and each state has, so many people living inside that to elect, the reason that we have single-member districts is so that, local interests can be taken into account and that they can be better reflected in Congress.
My Democratic comment, this follows up on one of your comments earlier, my Democratic congressman voted against the health care bill, perhaps because he feared not being reelected. What do you think of voting based on self-interest?
Well, we can see that exact example in Alabama. Artur Davis, he represents District 7, and it's the 19th, 4th district in the nation, yet he voted against health care. He was one of the few Democrats who voted against health care, but we see that was because he was running for Alabama governor. And I think, that just, it puts light onto how party politics play into, how congressmen do their jobs now.
I think the founders knew that our politicians would have a self-interest involved. Like in Federalist 51, it's shown that it's shown that ambition must be used to counteract ambition. And their self-interest, the only way they can get into government, into power, is if they go to the people and serve the people. The people are the ones who elect these representatives in government, so it's in their own self-interest to appeal to the people, and that's where they derive their power from.
In a very important case from your state, from Tuskegee, the case of Govillion versus Lightfoot, there was a case where the court ruled that a 28-sided figure that excluded virtually all blacks violated the 15th Amendment. Yet in Shaw versus Reno, Justice O'Connor, as you started, used the 14th Amendment. What's the difference?
Well, the 14th Amendment, provides for equal protection, defines, says that 14th Amendment provides for equal protection, while the 15th Amendment says that,
It requires, it defines citizenship, and no, not citizenship. The difference is in the Tuskegee case that we see. The 15th Amendment is used, but in the 14th Amendment it's used very much in the same way. The 14th Amendment, Section 5 of that allows Congress to, allows them the power to enforce any part of that bill. So we see that through the Voting Rights Act and the amendment of 1982, it is upheld so that in effect that both of are kind of used in a very, very similar way.
as a clarification, the 14th Amendment defines citizenship and gives everyone equal, equal representation in the United States, and the 15th Amendment allows blacks the right to vote.
In countries like Israel and Britain that have parliamentary systems, in recent years, Israelis are now able to vote for the prime minister separate from their member of parliament. And the British system becomes more like the American with every cycle. Why do you think some of the parliamentary systems are changing their operations to be more like ours?
What we've seen in our world with these rogue states and different terrorist organizations, it is much more easier for an energetic executive to combat, as Madison argued in Federalist 70, as they argued that the fact that it's much more easy for an energetic executive to take out these laws, be executed. We see that even with the House of Lords, right now the House of Commons in debating during actually the first televised prime minister debates in Britain, they are arguing that the fact that the House of Lords should be cut in half or not cut in half depending on which party it is, and that the fact that the House of Lords should now be elected and be more towards like our Senate, and they're moving more towards our model of a presidential model than they have in the past.
Right, and I think one of the primary reasons why we see so many of these different systems moving towards the presidential system is because our system works so well, and that we provide effective government because we have these three, we have the three branches. For example, in Great Britain they just had, they're now having a Supreme Court too, and so these three branches effectively, provide for three ways to govern, by writing law, executing law, and interpreting law, and that because that works most effectively, we see these systems moving towards our democratic system.
As we see in Israel, allowing you to elect a prime minister separately than your member of parliament allows the separation and the different check to where the prime minister is not so much accountable towards parliament, but he can execute law more quickly, deriving his powers from the people.